My name is Peter. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And welcome. Amazing. I'd like to ask Andy to come forward, please, and read the foreword to the first edition.
Andy.
Morning. My name's Andy and I'm a recovered alcoholic. Good to be here. Alright, this is the foreword to the first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. It says, "We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. It is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. When writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship to omit his personal name, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Very earnestly, we ask the press also to observe this request, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. We are not an organisation in the conventional sense of the word. There are no fees or dues whatsoever. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. We are not allied with any particular faith, sect or denomination, nor do we oppose anyone. We simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted. We shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced work with other alcoholics. We should like to be helpful to such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical and religious societies will be welcomed. Alcoholics Anonymous."
Thank you, Andy. This is an open workshop, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open workshop, you need not identify yourself or your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours. While this is an open workshop, membership in Alcoholics Anonymous and in the primary purpose group is limited to those who have a serious drinking problem and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. There are a number of other fellowships that deal with problems other than alcoholism. We will be happy to try and help you find the one that will meet your needs. I'd like please ask all present to please turn down the volume on your mobile phones or pages to limit disturbances to this meeting. And with that, I'm going to hand the entire proceedings over to the people you want to hear anyway. Chris and Myers from Texas.
Well, it freaks me out. Most of y'all came back. You know, that's a wonderful thing. It may mean that they didn't understand anything we said last night. I mean, we're honored to be here again, and we're gonna. I know the programs say that we got a 2.5 hour chunk here. What we're going to do is we're going to do an hour and then take a break, because I know some of you old geezers in here like Peter need to kind of pee often, and so we're going to and we're going to move pretty through here. Here's what we're not going to do today. We're not going to do this big, long, exhaustive step study. I've done weekends like this where we just grind out, 30 hours in one weekend. We're just, every little minutia, dissect every sentence. And I don't think Bill Wilson ever intended for us to do that anyway. But if y'all want to go to something like that, rock on. What we're going to try to do is we're going to come from an angle of we're taking a newcomer through the steps. There seems to be so much confusion about this. Well, how do you take somebody through the steps? And everybody, of course, sponsors a little bit differently. But the idea is to get them from point A to point B at a pretty good clip. And I know there's some in this room that would disagree with that. It's party line BS in treatment is, well, we didn't get sick overnight, we're not going to get well overnight, which is just crap. This is rubbish. I got well in about 2 weeks. I had a spiritual experience in about 2 weeks as a result of actually getting off my butt and doing some work. Guys, don't misunderstand me, because people email me all the time. I was really sick when I got here. It took me about a year to physically heal from some. I detoxed pretty quick, but there were some physical problems. Some people still think I'm still suffering from some of that. I said I wasn't quite wet-brained, but I was certainly damp. It was like I had some problems. But there was a financial disorder everywhere, and it took me a long time to kind of get both feet underneath me. But the spiritual experience, the obsession to drink, left very quickly. Not as a result of my wanting it to, but as a result of my willingness to follow some directions. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today. And some of you are going to be kind of taken aback. Well, it seems like they pushed through those steps pretty quickly. We did. This is not rocket science, folks, and we've got to stop making it that way. I've got it's the big laugh. If y'all ever come to Texas, I'll show you. I've got an 82-page 4-step guide sitting on my desk, and I just take it to set coffee and spill stuff on my desk, because I've never cracked it except to open it and say, is it really 82 pages? It freaks me out. Can you imagine this little guy sitting in a meeting, he's detoxing like a big dog, and you drop this 82-page guide down on him? He just cut his throat and just go commit suicide. Like, what are you asking me to do? So I had trouble just introducing myself, for heaven's sakes, when I got here, and so I'm so honored to be here. We've got some handouts over here, and you guys can come up after break and pick them up. We didn't print 100 of each, so if you're like in a group of 3 or 4 people, maybe y'all want to pick one, a designated handout picker-upper, and then y'all can make copies and take them back to you and make a gazillion copies of it. We just never know how many to do, and they're kind of heavy to be hauling around. They're pretty good copies of some pretty neat stuff that we've collected about first step stuff, and there's just some good stuff. I've got some little issue man buttons some of y'all have asked me for. Y'all take a handful of those, and there's just some great. I don't know. Free shit. People like that stuff. I don't know. I also brought the infamous rubber stamp. And this circle triangle, I want to mention too real quick. Peter was telling me that they're in the British books, in the English. They're not in most books out there. In the United States, in the American copies, they taken the circle triangle out on the title page of the original big book. In the first printings up through the third printing, they had a little circle triangle on this page. And this is how they finally kind of qualified me. I want to talk a little bit about that. When I first got back in 1987, they subsequently had copyright infringement problems, and the United States figured it was better to just take it out of the book instead of trying to defend our right to use it, which I thought was don't get me started. I don't even want to go there. But it was a sad deal they did. Anyway, I've got this little rubber stamp, and if you happen to have a big book and you'd like it stamped in the front, man, y'all come by and we'll just stamp you and put them all over that. Because one of the things that we were talking about, I know people in the States have got it tattooed on their deals. It was one of the things we were talking about last night is this thing called untreated alcoholism, and we'll touch a bit on that this morning again. But this untreated alcoholism is like, I stop drinking and I think I'm going to get better, and I start to get worse, because the problem is not the alcohol, the problem is the untreated alcoholism. You follow? If I stay in all 3 parts of this program, you can see where we're at with it here. I think most of y'all, can y'all see that? It's just, let me move this. Can you see that? A little better. This circle triangle, there's all 3 parts. We have a 3-part program solution to treat a 3-part disease. There's a physical part that's wrong with us, there's a mental part that's wrong with us, and a spiritual part that's wrong with us. And I've got the sheets up here too that kind of explain it more in depth, but I never understood why I couldn't stay sober. And when I finally got there in 1987, the first night I was in there, an old geezer opened up a big book and he said, "Chris, let's find out why you keep relapsing." And a bunch of y'all sitting in this room right now are having problems staying sober. If some of you are, it's because you're not in all 3 parts of this program. If you're in all 3 parts, you cannot relapse. This thing that's painted in treatment centers that recovery is such a nebulous tentative thing that if everything goes just exactly right, you can stay sober. Every day is a day I could relapse. That is so much rubbish. That is crap. That's not what the big book says. But y'all understand? Listen, folks, I'm a part of the treatment center industry, and the treatment centers want you to get well. They just don't want you to get too well. So what he did was he showed me on the title page of this book, he showed me the title, he titled it, and he says, Chris, what does recovery mean to you? Recovery. And I he'd and hawed around because I couldn't tell him. You'll follow? He says, Chris, it's the 12 steps. Let me ask you a question. Have you worked all 12 steps? And I remember that night saying, well, I've worked the steps to the best of my ability, because I've said that all, He said, Chris, let me kind of bring it down here for you. Let me kind of simplify this for you. I'm going to ask you some yes and no questions, and I want a yes and no answer. That's what he said. You think, well, it's pretty rigid. And he was smiling when he said it, but he didn't want an essay, because that's what it is. I want to talk and rationalize and justify why I haven't worked all 12 steps. I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous, calling myself an alcoholic for 7 years. But I don't anymore know what it is to be an alcoholic than the man in the moon. You'll follow? That's where the confusion comes in. He says, Chris, have you or not? I says, no, I have not. And he took a big old X. Which pissed me off. I have suffered from low self-esteem. That just hurt me. Okay. He says, go to the next part. He says, what does unity mean? What is this unity part? And I says, that's meetings. Absolutely, unity. I take my body, I take my mind to the recovery part, I take the body to a meeting. And I go, that's right. And meeting makers make it. He says, Chris, I know it. I've seen you up in North Texas going to lots and lots of meetings. You got that. You with us? You get a little check. You know how we do. Puff up a little bit, Chris, what's the third part? Service. What's AA service? He says, oh, well, it's emptying ashtrays and making coffee. And he says, no, that's not the service. That's a piece of it. Our service is to carry the message to the alcoholic who's still suffering. But you haven't worked the 12 steps, the recovery part, so you have no message to carry. I knew what he was going to do. We take our awakened spirit and we turn around and go help somebody else. You're not doing that, Chris. How many people have you sponsored in 7 years? None. Thanks for having a free ride. Y'all follow? He says you're not in 3 parts, you're in 1 part. It's like a 3-legged stool. Guys, you could do exercises on a 3-legged stool and be perfectly okay. Cut 1 leg off. You better be able to balance pretty good. Cut 2 legs off. You're going to fall on your butt. And that's exactly what we do in recovery. Guys, there's only 2 reasons that any of us in this room will ever relapse. 1 is we don't know what the problem is, and 2, we don't know what the solution is. Y'all follow? Well, what happens if my kid dies? What happens if this? What happens if that? No, it doesn't. In this context, it does not matter. There's only 2 reasons you're going to relapse. You don't know what the problem is. You don't know what the solution is. Y'all with us? Today, that's what we're going to talk about. A quick, fast way to get these cats connected to the solution. The only thing worse than drowning, folks, is doing it and not knowing it. And that's what we have. Our fellowship is full of people who sit in these meetings and they call themselves alcoholics, but they don't any more understand what it means to be an alcoholic than the man in the moon. You follow? This is why it drives me crazy when we spend too much time in meetings talking about our story. Let me talk about what happened to me. And it's like, again, we talked about last night. Up to a point, this is quite beneficial. We need that in order to identify. Make sense? I'm not going to listen to you for a second until I think you know what I'm talking about. So you share a little story with me, and I identify that you know your business. Now I want to go talk about the solution. I don't want to keep hearing you tell your same stupid, boring story over and over again. Because that's what it is. It's stupid, boring, quite old after a while. The old timers, if you read the archival literature, talk about it. They talk about it. Dr. Bob wrote about it. He said, gee, I don't know what all this big deal about telling our story. We didn't sit in meetings and tell our stories. There was only one place we did it, and that was from the podium when we were sharing our story. That's a very important place to do that. And in a 12-step call, you need to do that. I cannot do a 12-step call on somebody who's drinking and not tell my story and expect to get anywhere. I have to be able to share a little I see a guy at Denny's. Do they have Denny's in France? No. Little coffee shop having dinner, and he's fighting with a ketchup bottle and he can't get it out, and he's a mess. And I go sit down next to him. Have you found God? Listen, I'm going to walk away from that table with that ketchup bottle stuck up my butt. But if I sat down with him and said, about 15 years ago, I sat at this very same table and had the same fight with that ketchup bottle. This drinking's pretty crazy, isn't it? And we start sharing a little bit, and pretty soon I've got his little interest, and he's laughing a little bit, and I'm laughing a little bit, and then I'm fixing to go set the hook and tell him about God. I'm going to get to God. I'm going to get to the solution. I'm going to tell him about Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm not going to lead with that. You'll follow? That's all we're trying to do is identify and get these guys' interest. So that's kind of what we're coming from. Let me turn this over. This is Issue Man. It can be here, Issue Woman too. Some of you French girls, we should have made those a little bigger, I think. But this is Texas. Okay, never. Also want to mention, you guys, you feel free to ask questions in this. And here's how we want to do those questions. If you would rather catch us at a break and ask us questions, you're more than welcome to do that. And if it's really, we'll mention it in the next start. If you want to ask a question, feel free to do that, and I'll repeat it so that it'll show up on the CD. But what we don't want to do is get into a pissing contest with who's got the longest story in here, because all of y'all seem to be unable to just ask a question. Y'all know what a question is? It's got a question mark after it. It's one sentence. It doesn't have a lead-in, 6 paragraph, and then the question. Let me tell you the history of AA in Denmark, and then I'm going to ask a question. I'm fascinated. Let's do that down later after over a coffee, okay? Because we just simply don't have the time. In 1987, I told you last night I tried to commit suicide, and it was like there was nothing in me that wanted to die, guys. I mean, I had a great family, and I just did not want to feel the way I was feeling anymore. And I'd done everything I could possibly do to not drink. And I'd done 10 years of therapy, and I was taking 7 pills a day, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, lots of medications I was taking. Those medications were harder for me to get off of than the alcohol was hard. It was just unbelievable. And I've got my own soapbox about that. But I've been in AA for 7 years, and sitting in meetings because that's what the old geezers were telling me. And I agree with what Myers said. Could I have taken a little more initiative and found out a little bit more about this? Absolutely. But, for everyone that would say, Chris, you might want to do the steps, somebody else was saying, don't worry about the steps. Just come to meetings, don't drink, and everything was going to be okay. And I'm believing them. And I'm just saying it's one of the things that gets me in trouble from the podium, because I know a lot of people tell the newcomer that. It's a good way to interact with a newcomer, but not really have to get your hands dirty. Keep coming back. Thanks for nothing. It's like... Because if I'm a real alcoholic and I just keep coming back, nothing's going to happen. Y'all follow? It's like me just keep coming back to the gym. Nobody bothered to say you have to go upstairs and lift weights, And this is what you get. You actually got to do something. We're a spiritual program of action. That's what this is about. It's a spiritual program of action, and it is not some kind of a chicken shit self-help program. This is a spiritual program of action, but nobody bothered to tell me that. The AA meetings that I was going to at the time was in the mid-'80s, at the heyday of the treatment center industry in the United States. I could talk for an hour about how that all came about, but the truth is, up in North Texas, they were cranking them out by the thousands out of these treatment centers. Now, a lot of these treatment centers weren't explaining what alcoholism and drug addiction was anything. After all, a drug's a drug. It's all the same thing. No, it's not, but we're going to teach you that it is. And you're going to come into these meetings and talk about anything you want. Alcoholics Anonymous could have made a stand at that point and says, excuse me, this is not a a process group. This is a place where we study and learn about the steps so that we can turn around and go help another brother and sister get well. But we didn't do that. We sucked under trying to be helpful to everyone and turned our back on the problem. Make sense? Now, Alcoholics Anonymous did that. And AA's got to take some of the responsibility for our meetings going into the toilet. We allowed that to take place. We need to stop allowing that to take place. That night in 1987, the old geezer sat down, and that night and the next morning, they explained to me for the first time what it was to be an alcoholic. Y'all understand the term qualifying someone? If I wanted to look at one of these big old houses on the hill over here, the realtor, first thing he would qualify me first and find out. Basically, he would find out if I had any money or not, because he ain't even driving up that hill if I just want to go look at this house. Do you have the ability to buy this house? I'll take it and show it to you. You follow? And that's exactly what we stopped doing in Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And our fellowship grew and got bigger and bigger. But half the people that were coming into the rooms didn't even need to be here. I got to say, I'm watching the clock, guys. I know this offends some of you. I'm an alcoholic if I say I'm an alcoholic. No, you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous if you say you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. But unless you walk like a duck, quack like a duck, you ain't a duck. You follow? And that's the problem in treatment centers. We've got a whole lot of people in there that are ducks that think they're cats. And it's our job is to kind of reel them back in and try to get them back on track. So it says that's the biggest deal. That's our biggest job with the newcomer. If you're sitting down with a new guy or man or woman and they want to know, just don't say welcome. Keep coming back. Here's the call. Just you need to qualify them and find out. Do you even need to be here? Am I dealing with an alcoholic, or am I dealing with somebody that's just severely depressed with some antisocial behaviors attached to it? Because they look a lot like us. They drink a lot like us. But they're not us. Y'all with us? Let me stay with you, because there's some people shaking their head. In order to be an alcoholic, you have to exhibit certain symptoms. Now, these symptoms are the same in everybody, and that's the truth. Young people back here, old people back here, you've got a 19-year-old girl and you've got a 90-year-old man, and we're all going to have different circumstances in our life. You'll follow? We're going to drink a little different, blah, blah, blah. But there's certain things that are going to be absolutely identical. That's how we can identify this as a disease, because it's the same. Black, white, gay, straight, Yankee, rebel, Southern, I don't care. Same thing. And that's what we have to look at. But over the years, Bill Wilson in the first 100 pages describes the alcoholic. He paints a picture. Back over in the back of the book, I forget the exact page, it wouldn't matter anywhere, where the first meeting with Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, he talks about Dr. Bob and he says he had a great desire to stop drinking, but he didn't fully understand what it meant to be alcoholic. And that's the problem that we have in our fellowships today. We got a lot of people sitting in here that don't even understand what it is to be an alcoholic. What makes you an alcoholic? I drink too much. It's not quite it. Because a lot of hard drinkers out there drink too much. A lot of people consume too much alcohol. But given reason, good reason, it talks about in the book, they can stop on their own power. If you can stop on your own power, the big book says you're not one of us. You follow? And again, you're welcome. If you want to call yourself an alcoholic to be a part of this group, you're more than welcome to do that. All I'm saying is, you better know who you're working with. And again, Myers has said this 100 times. I'm not so concerned with whether you sneak in the door and get to come in here and get a free ride. You with me? I'm worried about the people that you end up sponsoring and don't bring through the work properly downstream. You may not be an alcoholic, 30 years sober, killing people with your crap, but the little guy that you're sponsoring is. You follow? And you're shortchanging him by not letting him do the work and get well. And it's the same story. He relapses. The first thing everybody wants to do is just dump it back in their lap. Well, he didn't stay sober. I mean, I hear it in meetings all the time. I was in AA for 10 years and never did the work. Yes? Then we need to look at this. And you need to look at this. Is it possible to stay sober 10 years without doing the work? Yeah. But the disease is progressive in nature, folks, and it's going to end up grinding you up. More of us commit suicide statistically in sobriety than we do out there drinking. Now, why is that? Because the problem is not the drinking. The problem is the untreated alcoholism. Y'all with me? Okay. a little booger right there. No, I just from y'all can take notes. Booger, that's a French word. I learned it last. No, here. From the doctor's opinion up in the front of the book, from the doctor's opinion up to page 23, Bill Wilson is trying to explain to us and talk to us about what happens when we have alcohol in our body. The physical phenomena called craving that Dr. Silkworth starts to talk about. He was a neurologist, I believe. The information that I had for about 16 years at Towns Hospital. What he ended up witnessing was that the same similarities happened with the old geezers and the young people and the black people and the white people. They all developed this same symptom. Once they started to drink, it was less likely that they could stop on a dime. You'll follow? It's not that every time I started to drink, I drank until I blacked out. But as the disease progressively got worse, it was less and less likely for me to be able to stop once I started. Can we get on that same page? Guys, the problem is not that I drank a little bit. The problem is that I got squashed. I tried to drink up half of France. That's the problem. Okay, why? My first wife used to ask that question. Why can't you drink like a normal person? Because I'm not boring like you. I don't know what to tell you. And we try to rationalize and justify. You know, I'm a very complicated individual. You know, I'm a very my intellect, you know, I mean, the truth of the matter is, I don't know. But he began to see this phenomenon called craving. I can go months and months and months and not drink until I put something in my system. That's what I was talking about last night. What we're starting to see in the treatment centers is people coming back in having relapsed around prescription medication. You know, prescribed by doctors that should know better that don't. You with us? And I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable if you're taking that medication. But I'm just saying you have to be careful with sleep medication, with pain medication, anything that kind of changes the way you feel. And it's different for everybody. I can take some kind of antihistamines, but Patty can't. Patty takes it, and you would have thought she just did a big shot of speed. It changes her different than me. When I want the house cleaned, we give her... And she just vacuums a lot. So we've got this physical piece, this physical phenomenon called craving that the doctor's opinion talks about. But nobody ever really explained that to me. Most everybody understands it. Doctors, lawyers, probation officers, a lot of people that I talk to understand this. You alcoholics, once you start to drink, you can't control how much you put in your body. You are truly powerless over it after you put it in your system. And everybody nods their head. This is the party line stuff that we teach everybody in treatment. I don't care if they're in treatment here in France or in the United States or Canada or Denmark. It's the same. Once you put it in your body, you are powerless over this substance. This is where the divergent roads, this is where everybody splits. My book, from 23 to 43, talks about this word called choice. You'll follow? This is the most controversial piece of info that I'm going to give you all day long. This is the one that everybody wants to split hairs with, and yet Bill Wilson spends 20 pages explaining it beautifully. Again, these page numbers may be different in your books, but he spends these pages explaining this thing called choice. Before I put this in my system, I have this mental piece in me that tells me to go ahead and put it in there. It's a psychotic thought the book talks about. It's a mental blank spot that says it's okay to continue to use this chemical. Everybody's comfortable with this physical piece. That's why in treatment we spend 90% of our time trying to get the newcomer to not put it in your body. You follow? We try to keep you away from slippery places and slippery things. You can't go those places because they might trigger you and you might just start to drink. You'll follow? This is all well and good, but it doesn't take us far enough. If we leave out the mental piece, and most of you do, I'm telling you from emails and correspondence, most of you do. I know they do in the United States. I talked to a man the other day. He introduced himself in a meeting like this. I know he's 19 years sober. He says, "My name's so-and-so, and I got up this morning and chose not to drink." And I'm sitting there. I turned around and I said, no shit. Huh. That's the stuff I listened to for 7 years, folks. I'm getting up in the morning and choosing not to drink, and by lunch I've changed my mind. Y'all follow? And this is the problem. The big book calls this mental blank spot, this insanity. If you really loved your family, you'd stop. You're right. And I'd make a decision to stop. And a week later, I'm drinking again. I didn't choose to drink. I chose not to do the things necessary to get spiritually connected. You follow? It's a form of mental insanity, folks. That's what makes this thing so deadly. Any idiot... We were talking last night at dinner. Worst things we'd ever eaten, blah, blah, blah. Mine was monkfish. I don't like... I cleaned a monkfish one time when I was in the kitchens in Atlanta. And they said, and I started to clean this fish, and I grabbed hold of this fish, and I pulled, and all this snotty stuff came off, and it was purple, and I had it all over the front, and I went, and I went to the chef, and I said, listen, I can't do this. And he said, cool, give it to somebody else. I'll get you something else to do. And that's the last time I've come within 10 feet of a monkfish. Given sufficient reason, can Chris Raymer stay away from monkfish? Absolutely. Given sufficient reason, can Chris Raymer stay away from alcohol? Even though I've promised you I'm going to stay away. I promised the judge. I promised that woman. I promised my employer that I wasn't going to do it. And I go back to it. You'll follow? This is why everybody wants to make this a behavioral problem. Why did you go back? Why did you go back? Well, the true answer, because I'm an alcoholic. Everybody thinks when we talk about this, what we're doing is we're letting the newcomer off the hook. Well, you tell them, here's what the book says. Here's what the book says. The fact is, this is on our page 24. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable, at certain times, to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory and suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. You'll follow? Back over in the United States, back in the 70s and the early 80s, they used the aversion therapy. Y'all know that? They still use it in Russia, I understand, a lot. And the aversion therapy was quite simple. They'd hit you with antabuse, give you a chemical that would make you sick when you drank, and then they would give you all the damned alcohol you wanted to drink, and you would get sick twice a day. Big communal stainless steel. Everybody would just have a puke-a-thon, and everybody would puke, and it was like, oh, that's disgusting. Yes, it is, and we're going to do it again this afternoon, and we're going to do it in the morning, and we're going to do it in the afternoon, and it was just like a week, and they would do this after a period of time, and then you would associate alcohol, puke, bad. You with us? This form of treatment worked beautifully for hard drinkers. Hard drinkers, moderate drinkers, they never touched another drop. They're all out of business in the United States because they simply were ineffective with real alcoholics. We cannot stop given any reason. We can stop for short periods of time, but then we can't bring to the forefront of our mind the problem. You with us? It's why it drives me crazy back in the olden day in treatment when they used to throw our families up in front of us. Don't you love your kids? Boy, you want to talk about disrespectful. Be the same thing as listening to your significant other puke in the bathroom, and you'd knock on the door and say, honey, if you really loved me, you'd stop that. What? How are you going to stop? What? It's the same thing. I can't no more stop this than the man in the moon. I am truly powerless. This is why this is fatal. I will drink this crap until the day I die. Unless the book says I have a spiritual experience. That seems to be the grinder right there. Hard drinkers and hard druggers hard drinkers and real alcoholics look exactly alike, folks. Out there drinking. Our stories will jive a lot there too. But when you want to get down to it, you look at these two words right here, control and choice, and that's what we're looking at. You'll follow? If you want to qualify a newcomer, ask him point blank. When you start to drink, have you ever lost control and drank more than you intended? We give everybody one bonus puke. You'll follow when you're new. Because we're stupid when we're little kids. When we're young, we don't know. And the first time we get around something or away from home and we can drink whatever we want, we usually drink to everybody. They drink too damn much. And they throw up, puke straight up, okay? The question is, did you ever do that more than once? Yes? We have something we have to look at here now, guys. Normal people don't do that. My little sister says it all. No, thank you. I don't. We did it at her wedding. We said, Lisa, you want another drink? It's free. She was paying for it. And she says, no, thank you. I'm starting to feel it. So. Me too. You want another drink? So I don't understand. My body's all geared up. I'm ready to go. She's stopping because she knows 2 more and she's going to be throwing up, and she don't want to do that on her nice night. So, understand? You combine that. That physical allergy, though, a lot of people are allergic to alcohol. When I drink alcohol, something in it, the hops or something makes me sick, I just don't drink alcohol. It's the same with us. Okay, then don't drink. Oh, well, I can't. I always drink. Now we got something to look at. You're going to tell me you chose to drink? Given sufficient reason. You just drank up last month's rent. You just got a DWI. You just went back to treatment. You just made promises, blah, blah, blah. Can you stop and stay stopped? Well, what does your experience show you? You look at your truth based on your experience. No, I can't stop. I can stop for 2 or 3 weeks, but I always go back. Welcome. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. We got your solution. Here's the piece that nobody wants to talk about. The spiritual piece. We're going to hit this today, guys. We're not going to hit it too hard because it doesn't need to be hit too hard. Man, I don't care who you pray to. I don't care what's going on. But the book, you can't deny it, talks about it. The spiritual malady, the spiritual illness is as real as can be. And it's this internal condition that causes alcoholics and addicts to drink. Guys, at 17 years old, somebody gave me a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine, and I lit up like a neon sign. Y'all understand that? I felt good inside. I'm not walking back across that field after drinking that bottle of wine and saying, oh my gosh, the spiritual malady that's been kicking my ass all my life has been treated. I feel great. It was none of that. It's like, I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to find out some more of this. This is pretty good. Everybody's had the same experience with the alcohol. It makes me feel okay inside. And it wasn't until 1987, 7 years in AA, all those years in therapy, nobody talked about this. What's wrong with Chris Raymer is not the booze. This is not the problem. I can quit. I've done it 1,000 times. I can stop on a dime. I can't stay stopped because this internal condition, this spiritual malady, starts to kick my butt. This is the symptoms of the spiritual malady. This is what the internal condition looks like, unmedicated. You with me? Irritable, restless, and discontent. Can y'all identify with that? Think about it. Irritable. Oh. Last week I stopped drinking, and this week I'm throwing cars. Everybody's pissing me off. Irritable. Restless. Can't sit still. You ever seen a newcomer in a meeting? They're like a caged cat. Just can't. Discontent. Nothing's good enough. Just top sales in my company. Big awards all over the wall, and it's not good enough. The book talks about a feeling of uselessness. The bedevilment's on page 52. Can y'all get that? You're drop dead gorgeous, and yet you're harming yourself. This low self-esteem. It's what the book talks about. No sense of direction. I want to move here. I want to move there. I want to go back to school. And then by lunch, I'm going to start a new business instead. And I can't get focused. It's why we drive the women crazy. Our dates. It's like, oh my gosh, I thought you said you loved me. I do, but that was last week. We're going to move on now. You know, because I can't. No sense of direction. This internal discomfort. There's one line on 52 that says it sums it up. It says we were unhappy. And that was me. How many of us in this room, though, guys, have spent a lifetime trying to find out what's going to make me happy? How much money's enough? How much sex is enough? How big a house do you need? And we spend a lifetime trying to fix this internal condition. We got these cats coming into this beautiful hospital where I work who, on the outside, would look like their lives are perfect. But you talk to them, and they're suicidal. All they want to do is die. Y'all follow? So we can get them detoxed. That's the first piece. We get them past the physical, out the phenomena called craving, but we can't do jack to get them past this. They don't leave it. They don't leave early, guys, when they're going through this. They stay there. Their little ego is about this big at that point. They're going to do anything we ask them to do. Y'all follow? They're all beat up. Chris, come over here, and they move. Come over there, and you're just following instructions. You know, just show up to group. Let's go. Come on now. Let's go. Hurry up. Okay, I'm coming. Everything's fine. And about 4 days in, they start to get past this physical stuff, and all of a sudden his ego starts to get a little bigger. And now all of a sudden, you know it's happening because they'll look up and they'll see a girl, you know. Before now, it's been focused. God, sobriety. I'm God, sobriety. Now all of a sudden, a girl walks by and he's like, we're danger. We got problems. Now all of a sudden, I can smoke anywhere I want. I just spent a fortune coming to this place. You can't tell me what to do. Now, have y'all worked with guys like that? They come in, I'm willing to go to any length to get sober. I will do anything. You can have my babies. I just help me get sober. And about 2 months in, they won't even return your call. Where were you last night? Oh, I decided I didn't need to go to that meeting. There was a movie on I hadn't seen in years. And where did the willing to go to any length go? Y'all follow? It went the way of the ego. What's happening is this internal condition's coming back and it's kicking their butt. You follow? Guys, I'm going to say this and sit. This internal condition must be treated. It's like a pressure cooker. You put that thing down, clamp it down real tight, turn the heat up underneath it, and you can take this for a short period of time, and then you will explode. And you will come up with some stupid excuse to put something in your body that changes the way you feel. You follow? You'll eat a pill that you've never even tried before. I remember one night walking in, I said, what are those? And he says, those are horse tranquilizers. And I said, horse tranquilizers? I was about 2 weeks sober away from the alcohol, and I didn't have any alcohol, no dope, no nothing like that. I said, horse tranquilizers? What are they? He said, yeah, this is good stuff. And I said, man, you'd have to be crazy to eat a horse tranquilizer. And 2 hours later, I'm back there knocking on his door. You got any more of those things? Oh my gosh. Why would you do that? Because you've got to have something to treat this internal condition. You with us? Everybody says, well, I just wanted to party. No, you wanted this internal condition to get fixed. This is what happens to us. This is why in 1935, when Alcoholics Anonymous started, they published the book in 39. It was 35 when the two guys got together. We started seeing the first big purge of this disease because it was the first thing that treated this. The medical fraternity spent forever trying to get us detoxed, but how frustrating it continued. Bill Wilson was in Towns Hospital on his third time is when he finally got sober. You with us? He left AMA both times. He'd gone to Towns Hospital twice before. He had left both times early because this ego returned. He got detoxed, felt like it was great. I don't know why everybody's making a big deal of this. I'm out of here. And split. You with us? And the last time he got hold of the little cat, Ebby came and 12-stepped his butt in the hospital and started showing him how to work the steps. He had the rudimentary understanding. He was working on his 9th step in Towns Hospital when he had his barn-burning spiritual experience. You'll follow? Never to drink again. Everybody thinks we're going to learn all this information and blah, blah, blah and have this spiritual experience. The truth is you're going to get off your butt, you're going to start doing this work, and somewhere between 1 and 12, you're going to have an experience with God. It's a given. I don't believe in God. Work the steps. Shut up, please, and work the steps. I know that makes some of you uncomfortable. We get people get up and walk out of here when they find out we're talking about this. And I'm sorry, but how close-minded can you get? Work the steps. You will have a necessary spiritual experience strong enough to overcome the obsession to drink and drug. And these first time these guys explained this to me, I sat back with tears in my eyes and said, geez, in 7 years in AA, nobody ever explained this to me. Nobody ever explained what alcoholism is. You with me? And every time I'd go to another meeting and you would tell a worse war story than me, I would sit back a little less uncomfortable and say, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. You follow? Stop looking at the drama. The two questions you need to ask in first step are this right here. The unmanageability that the book is talking about in first step has got nothing to do with my external world. It's got to do with this internal world. Spiritual malady, untreated alcoholism, unmanageability, all the same thing. You'll follow? That's good stuff. You got anything you want to add to that?
No, let's wait and take a break. We'll pick it up right after we get up.
Let's go drink.
15 minutes is fine. 15 minutes.
Real quick, I just want to clear up something. As always at the breaks, y'all ask the best questions. Y'all talk about. One of the things that I always strike some nerves because I know there's some people in here that are taking medication, sleep medication or antidepressants, and I'm not one of those AA buckaroos that says that there's no room for any kind of medication because that's nuts. Because some of us need medication to get through the day, but there's some real big misunderstandings about it. And if any of you guys that want to stop and visit, I see it every day in the treatment center industry where I work. It's like we were talking about the other night. If the 227 million prescriptions of antidepressants in the world, geez, we got a lot of people trying to medicate just waking up not feeling good. Y'all follow? There's depression and then there's depression. Y'all follow? And a lot of people are taking pills to medicate what ordinarily could be medicated by this internal condition can also be treated. You're having trouble sleeping. You might want to look at the amount of caffeine you're putting in your body. And as we get older, we have a less and less likely to sleep. Maybe melatonin would be necessary. But it always seems to be a pill to fix the problem. If I'm depressed, let me ask you a question. How much exercise are you getting? Oh, I run all day long. Horse shit. No, when you get up and actually go run, that's one thing. But just doing work around the house is not work. It's not exercise. Y'all follow what I'm saying? When's the last time you got out and actually walked up and down this beach at a pretty fast clip and got your heart up? Guys, we're not sedentary people. And a lot of this is we don't exercise, we drink too much caffeine, we eat too much heavy food, and then we wonder why we feel kind of blah. And then the first thing we want to do, you follow? A lot of cats, it's like the guys that I sponsor, we end up having to go back through this work. Says, well, I'm on these medications. I says, why? Because I can't sleep. And I says, why can't you sleep? I says, well, I don't know. I lay down and all I can think about is how much money I owe. Oh? So let's start looking at our credit. Let's start looking at our money. That's part of what I do as a sponsor with the guys I sponsor is I help them try to figure out financially where they're in. I watch a lot of people in the fellowship end up spinning themselves into happiness. How many of you guys ever went and bought something that you really didn't want? You did it because you thought it sounded like a good idea at the time. I'm living in an apartment in Houston, Texas with Myers one time, and we bought a sailboat. I'm talking about a big damn sailboat. Yes, we were drunk at the time. But why were we? It was the boat show. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go buy a 32-foot sailboat. What? Why did we do that? Because for a minute, it felt great. A lot of you guys do that. That's the same thing. We eat too much. We get in bad relationships. We spend too much money, all trying to treat the spiritual malady. If we would just do the work, the spiritual malady would be treated, we would feel good again, and then we could get some real balance in our lives for the first time. Y'all follow? Somebody hit me up with the deal. Well, some of us need antidepressants. Yes, some of us do. Most of us don't. It's not the answer. A pill is very seldom the answer. Thanks.
Yep.
Go get him. Yep. Oh, here's that little Crayola. Yep. And for those guys listening to the tapes and CDs later on, the evil twin just sat down and the good twin just got up. Okay. It's interesting when you listen to these things, you'll have a hard time telling who's talking because we sound a lot alike. And I know that you in the room can see the aura around me, and so you'll know that I'm the good one. Oh, shoot. I've already got the troublemakers picked out. I already know who they're going to be. I'm going to separate some of you in a minute, I can tell. The stuff that Chris was talking about just now, it's interesting deal. In our literature, I don't know what it is in your book, in the French book, but in ours on page 17, they talk about something called the common solution. I want to read something real quick, and it will kind of launch us into what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. I'll read it out of this one, and then you can find it later. All the way down the page in our book, it says, the feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. It is. You remember the first time you ever walked into an AA meeting and you finally relaxed for just a minute and you kind of looked around the room? Your eyes finally got up off the table and you began to look around and you began to sense that you were in a room full of people that weren't judging you, that you could actually relax around. These were people just like you. These were little knucklehead fried pie guys that did the crazy crap you did, and you felt a unity with them. Well, this is good, and I'm not making light of any of that. But look at the book and the next line, what it says. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. Uh-oh. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. So hold the thought for just a minute. The reason that we stay so fragmented in AA today is because we have ceased finding and seeking that common solution. What we've started doing is doing everything on our own, kind of freewheeling out there, and if it worked, it worked. And then we'll pass that information on. That's the reason why the meetings where we're just talking about a bunch of stuff get so bizarre sometimes. Yes, it maybe worked for you, but would it work for the brand new guy? That's the reason why they wrote the literature in the first place. That's the reason why they went through so much effort to put the thing together so that we could stay focused on the common solution. the cat when Andy read the foreword of the first edition, that first paragraph of the foreword of the first edition. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we've recovered is the main purpose of this book. You see? And we've drifted clear of that. And what happened is in that drifting sideways away from that common solution, we stopped being effective sponsors. Let me ask you guys a question. First, let me clarify something. I say you guys a lot. You guys means girls and guys too. It's like y'all in Texas. It means all of you. In Australia, some girl got so angry with me because she thought I was being discriminating against the women. It's so tedious to try to talk and go, now guys and gals, it just takes extra time to do that. And so I treat everybody in the same. I guess I could say you girls and we will ignore the guys and then it will be okay with me too. That's good, we'll do that. So you girls, remember, ask yourself sometimes, this is a great example of what I'm talking about. I'm sponsoring some cats right now, brand new guys. It's funny how my sponsorship stuff has changed. I used to sponsor nothing but indigents, just guys off the street. These days I sponsor more and more business guys and guys that are chronic relapsers and men who have been in the program for many, many years. And they've gotten what we would call AA slick. They know the things to say, they know the things to do, they have become icons in their groups wherever they're going, but they don't really understand why it is that the internal condition, which is alcoholism, is kicking their butts. Why is it I get up every morning obsessing about a woman I haven't got? Why is it I get up every morning unhappy that I don't have enough money, that I'm not... You see what I'm saying? It's just this crazy malaise that we find ourselves into. So it's one of those kind of things where if we, in this collection of men that I'm working with right now, I have 5 guys who have a combined sobriety of well over 100 years. These guys are almost 20 plus, one of them's close to 30 years sober. Collectively, one night we were all sitting in a little room, and collectively, these 5 men, I said, how many men have you guys sponsored? And collectively, they had sponsored 5 guys. Which meant one guy had sponsored 2, one guy hadn't sponsored any in almost 20 years. And you see what I'm saying? We have sold ourselves on this idea that sponsorship is this absolute beating, that it's just this nasty ordeal that we got to go through. And it's so painful for me as a sponsor, and I'm so uncertain about what to do that I'll just hold it at a distance. And so I'm in a meeting and I share something and I'm watching this little guy and he's looking at me and I'm going, oh no. He's going to ask me to sponsor him. And so I do whatever I can do to get clear. Some of you spiritual giants wouldn't do that. But I'm telling you, if you do it and will admit it, I empathize with you because I did it for years. I love you. I want you here. I just don't want to have anything to do with you, really. I'm just here to share. Okay? Because sponsorship, frankly, scares the spit out of me because I am uncertain about my own truth. And that's the reason why we spent so much time this morning talking about step 1 truths. If I am uncertain why I drink, then I will be ambivalent about sponsorship and about carrying that message to somebody else. It's like trying to teach somebody how to paint when you don't know how to paint. The hell are you doing? I mean, you see, I haven't had the experience as a recovered alcoholic, but I'm going to try to teach you how to become a recovered alcoholic. I haven't actually had sex, but I'm going to teach you about having sex. Can you imagine how uncomfortable that would be, trying to teach somebody about something they've never experienced? You see, and that's the reason why I think that we've gotten in so much trouble in AA land out there worldwide, is that we have tens of thousands of people sitting in meetings sharing about experiences that they have not had. And it's tolerable with the younger guys, but when you get guys like me sitting in meetings doing it, it's really sad. It's really sad. And the only thing that it takes to get back on track is just some courage, just some willingness to lay there in the bunk at the end of the day and look at the ceiling and go, do I really understand my disease? Do I really understand how to get a guy from point A to point B? And if you do, super. Let me give you another fast example. We were in a meeting one night in a deal much like this, and I said, how many of you guys feel comfortable and understand how to carry a man through the work? And everybody raised their hand. There wasn't one person in the room that didn't raise their hand. And over the weekend, between breaks, I was talking to these guys, and it became real obvious. You know what? None of you guys know how to carry anybody through the work. There wasn't one guy that I talked to that had a clear picture of what to do. And so we had to kind of break that down in the next little meeting session, which was fairly painful, and there's a little weeping going on. But it was okay. We got through the deal. But the cool part about it is that once you make that realization, once you go, I may not be clear about what to do, then you can begin to piece together the things that you need to understand. The reason sponsorship is tough going is because I make it tough going, because I've added all kinds of things in here. I think I have to be your best friend. I don't. I don't even have to like you. Guys, I sponsor guys now that I can't stand. I swear to God, I don't even want to be in the same room with them. But I'll love them enough to show them what I did to recover. I'll show them what needs to be done. But this idea that I've got to take on the responsibility of all their financial woes, all their spiritual woes, all their relationship problems, there's nowhere in this literature that said that. It's no wonder that we get so scared about the idea of sponsorship. And so what this is an idea, and if you're doing that, fine. If I'm sponsoring one man, I can take a lot of his responsibility. I can shoulder a lot. But let me ask you this question, just for an observation. What if you're sponsoring 30 men? Then what do? You see? And people say that all the time. You can't do that. Sure you can. I've been doing it for years. Sure you can. And most of the guys that I sponsor are doing that. You bet you can. And that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. We're trying to kind of gently dust off the stuff that's cluttering everything up and making this thing complicated, and getting it so that it's a little easier to do, so that you can run through this process a little quicker. Something that Chris said earlier that I want to make sure that we clarify. I have no right in any form or fashion to ever label you an alcoholic or a non-alcoholic. That is not my job to label you one way or the other. It is my job, however, to help you see your truth around your alcoholism. Because if you're not sure, if you're ambivalent about any part of that, if you're questioning your own sobriety or your own alcoholism, then it will manifest itself later. It'll come out later down the road. And you'll see a lot of that. And that's the reason why in the beginning we spend so much time. That's the reason why Bill Wilson in the first of the book, when they wrote this thing, that's the reason why they spent so much time talking about this mental component that was at the bottom of this thing. This idea, the doctor's opinion in the front of the book addresses what? Primarily the physical allergy, the physical part of alcoholism. Everything else from the doctor's opinion all the way up through page 44, there's a whole big old slug of book in there. Fred's story, Jim's story, the Jaywalker story, all of these stories are there for what? Trying to get you to get your arms around this idea of a mental obsession. The mental component. This is the stuff that separates me from the goofy hard drinker that sat on that same bar stool out there that could quit or moderate. We all have hard drinkers in our families. We all see guys like that. Oh, I had an Uncle Joe one time, and he just one day just stopped. See, nobody wants to ask whether Uncle Joe was a real alcoholic or not, you see. And what we're trying to do in this initial meeting, Andy, where did Andy go? Andy's my brand new drunk. He just came in. For the taping record, he's not. He's been sober a long time. But Andy's my brand new guy, and he comes in, and we're going to spend some time initially talking about this thing. We're going to try to figure out if he can. What do they talk about in chapter 7, working with others? They spend most of the first part of this stuff giving you illustrations of how they 12-stepped each other. And one of the primary things that they did was not try to beat him up and drag him into AA. They tried to do what Bob did, what Bill did to Dr. Bob. They tried to sell him on the idea of alcoholism. Bob's a spiritual giant. Bill came in, this little busted up guy came in and for the very first time sold Bob on the idea of the hopelessness and the chronic nature of his alcoholism. And from that moment, Bob goes, holy cow, this is not fun. This is going to kill me. You see, I suffer under the illusion that at some point, at any point in there, it'll get bad enough and I'll just say, I'm not going to do this anymore. Or I'm going to adjust some external circumstances. I'm a drunk because she's here. I'll get rid of that cow and I'll be okay. You see, it's crazy. There it is. Once again, we've slipped over here and we're treating alcoholism as if it's a behavior problem. I'll modify behavior. If alcoholism was a behavior problem, treatment centers would be turning out 100% recovered alcoholics every day by the thousands. We're just going to modify your behavior. We're going to find out what it was that made you drink the way that you drink. And yet it's not. Alcoholism, it's just not behavioral. There may be behavior stuff that exacerbates and causes problems within the confines of the alcoholism. But when we strip everything else away, I have a body that simply will not handle alcohol the right way. My pancreas and liver, the way it processes alcohol is different than the normal drinker. And now combined with that, I have a mental component of this thing that's destined to kill me because my mind will always tell me that a drink will fix it. Always. I don't care how bad my drama got. I don't care what happened. I don't care what circumstances it was at the lowest that I ever was as a drunk. Give me a little bit of time to think about it. A few moments sometimes. And my head takes me back to a time on the Guadalupe River when I was 17 years old in Texas, and I got a quart of beer right here and a little girl right here, and the moon's coming up through those cypress trees, and I can feel the breeze in my face, and it is perfect. Perfect. My head, the mental part of this, always takes me back to that time. And I'm destined, from that perspective, I'm destined to always drink again. Because it worked then, it solved every problem I had then. But see, a normal person doesn't do that. Did you ever wonder when you're reading all these examples in the big book, Fred's story and Jim's story, and the jaywalker especially, did you ever look at those stories and go, why are these are the stupidest stories in the world. Why would these be in there? I never connected the dots. I never could understand why he spent so much time. I just skipped over them. I just go, we don't need that crap, and we'll get into something else. I didn't understand. What they were trying to do is get me to understand that how different I am from the non-alcoholic. This is the very thing that separates me from the heavy drinker, the little disco drunk that just got in trouble, maybe left a bar one night, got a DWI, and the judge says, you got to go to AA, and so he comes to AA. And so everybody in the room, it's all hands off. Welcome, welcome, I'm glad you're here. And we are. There's nothing wrong with that. But then everybody stays clear of him, and nobody wants to help him see what his truth is. This little guy may not be an alcoholic. He may not be. And the reality of that is that it's our job as real deal alcoholics to help him see his truth. Not so we can kick him out of AA. Please don't go there. Please don't. Not so that we can be exclusionary and elite here. Don't do that. We're trying to help this guy understand. If he understands on a gut level that alcoholism is chronic in nature and he's going to die of this deadly disease, then all of the lurking notions that I can drink like normal men and women will go away. That discomfort, there's an article down here that talks about this. That discomfort is the greatest thing in the world. In AA, we immediately muddy the water because we say, if you forget your last drink, you haven't had it. That's crap, guys. I forgot my last drink. I'm telling you, and you will too. I can't even remember. We sit in meetings and we talk about these war stories. I can't even remember my own war stories, much less your war story. It's just, we try to keep each other scared about the story. I need to remember what it was like so I can pass that on to somebody else when I'm talking to them. But the real crux of what I need to know and remember and keep dear to my heart is the chronic nature of alcoholism. And from that point of discomfort, I will gladly embrace anything you ask me to do. I will be willing to do whatever you want me to do. It's funny how we trivialize this stuff. If Andy came up to me after this meeting and said, Myers, I've got some bad news. I've got some cancer, and I think I'm real sick. We would feel sorry for him, and I'd say, Andy, what are you going to do? And he said, well, they have a clinic in Paris, and Monday morning I'm going to be there, and we're going to start treatment. No kidding. Yep, that's what we're going to do. Now see, this is how we treat something that we take seriously. But it's a funny thing, in alcoholism, which is as deadly and kills as many people as cancer does, we just simply trivialize it. We just kind of like I say, Andy, don't you think you better get busy with these steps and we'll get on into this stuff? Oh, well, I have plenty of time. A man in the meeting the other night said I need to feel comfortable in AA before I start any of the steps. So I figure in a year we'll start. Maybe a couple of months down the road we'll start. Immediately what we've done is we've trivialized our disease. We've just said it's good. But guess what? On page 24 in our literature, in our book, they talk about this thing we won't be able to bring into consciousness with sufficient force, the pain and suffering of even a week or a month ago. Bill was clear on this in the beginning of this deal, that we won't be able to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force what it was like, what happened. We think we will. Oh, I'll know when how many guys that are sponsoring guys have heard this? I'll know when I get sick enough. You hear this? Oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. I know I haven't been to a meeting in 6 months, but I'll know if I get sick. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because here it is in fashion. The spiritual malady will begin to reassert itself, and you will begin to feel separate and apart from everybody. You already feel separate from AA, don't you? Uh-huh. And then in short order, I'm going to feel separate from God. Uh-huh. And now I'm just out there freewheeling, trying to manhandle the day and make something happen. You see? And from that perspective, it's only a matter of time before the thought, wouldn't a quart of beer taste great, comes in. And my own arrogance tells me it'll never happen. But my experience and the experience of thousands of drunks that have gone before me says it will happen. It will. You know, any of you guys ever been caught off guard and found yourself in that situation where all of a sudden you're almost ready to take a drink? It's a scary, scary place to be. Terrifying to realize how quickly you can slide back into that situation and how quick you can get sick again. Anyway, that's the reason why we do this stuff. It's not. We're not here insisting that you do the work the way we do the work. That's not why we're here. We're here hoping that as we talk about this work, that we can kind of follow back and get into a sort of a semblance of a line, carrying a common solution, so that we can. The book says that our common solution would guarantee your recovery. It says it in dozens of places in the book. And so all we needed to do, and that was what I found after going to primary purpose group at 7 years sober. Devastated by what alcoholism was doing to me again, although I hadn't taken a drink yet. But I get in with these guys and they say, we have a common solution and we're going to talk about that one thing. I know, but I need to share my day. No, you don't. Not here. Share it with your sponsor. Here, we're going to share a common solution. And it was tough, guys. I got to tell you, it was tough. When you're a guy like me who was used to sharing that kind of stuff, it was the hardest thing that I ever did was to bite my tongue and not share that kind of stuff. But once I understood, and we're going to talk about that some this afternoon, once I understood that I could actually share hope in a meeting by sharing the common solution, that the solution that the literature gave us carried great weight in hope to the newcomer. Then all of a sudden it wasn't me trying to carry some lame message, it was the big book in its power and the steps in its great power carrying this message of hope and recovery. Good stuff. Good. So let's pretend, for the sake of this example here, let's pretend that what we have is Andy is come into this meeting and we've pulled him off to one side after the meeting and we're sitting there just kind of talking a little bit. I tell him a little bit about my stuff. He tells me a little about his stuff, and he goes, He's a slam dunk. He already knows that he's an alcoholic. He's not faltering under any illusions that he's anything else. He knows what he is, which is great. It makes it that much easier. And then finally he just says, I think I'm just like you. I recognize in your story that you and I are a lot alike. And then he looks at me and he does just what the book describes. He says, Myers, tell me what you did. Oh, there it is. It's the hook. That's all I wanted him to say. That's all I wanted him to do is ask me what I did. And then I could tell him. I made a beginning, just like what you're doing, Andy. I had to come to grips with the fact that I've got a chronic disease that's going to kill me. Are we okay there? We're all on the same page? And Andy goes, I know I'm screwed. Terrific. And then we talk about this stuff. If lack of power, remember, the bugaboo here is not the booze. The bugaboo, the problem is that I cannot manage the decision to not take the drink. Guys, we're all good stoppers. We're just better starters. You see? It's just sort of the nature of that beast. And so there's what we're trying to do is that get him to understand that if he thinks he's going to be able to muster the willpower, we've got to squash that real quick. If this isn't about willpower, if it was about willpower, most of us would be in real trouble. This is not about willpower. This is about finding a power greater than ourselves that could get us to a place where we could get clear of this deal. And this is where the world gets kind of goofy on this thing. But Bill, it's funny how it all worked out. If we understood on a gut level that lack of power was our dilemma, that's what's going to kill us. We don't have the power to stay clear of the booze. If we understand that's the problem, then the solution is obvious. I got to find some power. And that's what the rest of this work was about. How to find the power that was enough, that was sufficient enough to get me clear of the booze. And we get sold all kinds of things which confuse the issue. Meeting makers make it. They're going to... In AA worldwide, it always seems to go back to the meeting. If you want to survive, be in the meeting. If you want to do this, be in the meeting. If you want to be in the meeting. And you know what? In our literature, there's not one place ever where it says that the solution to your problem is in a meeting. Please don't misunderstand this. I don't want you calling your sponsor after this thing and saying, you know what that little bastard said? He said, don't go to a meeting. I didn't say that. I'm going to make it clear. I did not say that. But what I said is that if you're putting all your eggs in that basket, you may be in for a real surprise. Because there's a lot of us that die sitting in the meeting. There's a lot of us that get real sick sitting in the meeting. The meeting will not treat the internal condition, which is your alcoholism. The only thing that we know that will effectively do that are the steps. A connection to a higher power that we're going to come to know at some point in time in the deal. And that's why it's so important on the deal like that. It's like, if the meeting was the big deal, then don't you think Bill Wilson would have done step 13? Go to meetings. But he never said that. There are a lot of people that recovered just by reading the big book. Just by going through and following the clear-cut directions, got through the deal. You see? The meetings are important, guys. They certainly are. But sometimes we get hung up in that. And I think some of you guys already recognize that. Some of you will recognize that. If you don't, put it on a personal basis. Stop and think about what it was like when you first got to AA and you were so excited you were about to pee on yourself every time you went to a meeting. You just couldn't. It was the coolest thing in the world. I can't wait to get back in the meeting. Nothing wrong with that. But I want you to fast forward 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, however long it took. And now all of a sudden the meeting seems tedious to me. And I'm making excuses why I can't go, and why I don't want to go, and it's just all of these things are happening because as a taker in AA, as this need to be fed by the meeting gets me downrange. What happens is that eventually the internal condition again is not being treated. It's not getting what it needs, and I get sick. You see, we're there as a novel thought. We're going to talk about it all today. We're there to give, not receive. I'm there in the meeting to give, not receive. And if you're going into the meeting waiting to be fed, you're in for a frustrating time. Because in that thought process, guys, in that thought, there's a great deal of expectation. And when my expectations aren't met, I get goofy. I want to retaliate. I get mad. I weep. All these emotional things are attached to my expectations of what you're supposed to be feeding me in that meeting. It's a really sick place to be. But the moment, this is the thing that they taught me when I got over to that crazy primary purpose group and those guys. The moment I made the mental connection that I was there to give instead of receive, everything about my program shifted. All of a sudden I'm enthused about learning about the book because this is what I have to teach. You see, I can't teach my guys that I sponsor if I don't understand it myself. And so if you want to become a good, strong sponsor, learn the book. They go kind of hand in hand. I didn't really care about what was in the book until I was faced with the prospect of sponsoring a handful of guys. And then all of a sudden I'm going, oh, crap. Now what? You see? Then I had to get busy. And you'll understand that stuff. I hear people in meetings all the time going, well, I'm working on step 2. I'm working on step 2. And 6 months later, well, I'm almost there to step 2. I just want to slam my head down on the desk. There's nothing to work on. It's the simplest part of the whole deal. It doesn't make any difference if you have a formed idea of what God is like and you're all warm and fuzzy with it, or if you have no idea what it's like and you don't even really believe there's a God. You don't have to believe anything. And Bill, in his infinite wisdom, those guys that wrote the book, wrote a whole chapter called We Agnostics, Working with Others, because they knew that at least 50% of us that came to this deal had God sideways in our craw when we got here. We're not all little sunbeams for Jesus when we get here. We aren't. Some of us are. I'm telling you guys, there's a part of me that wanted to break God over my knee when I got here. I just didn't want anything to do with God. And the thought of it made me sick. But the thought of dying drunk made me sicker. The thought of dying an alcoholic death was horrifying to me. And so, all I did was follow the directions in the book of what they were talking about. Was I willing to believe that there was anything out there bigger than me that could restore me to sanity? The insanity that they're talking about is the mental component of this deal. It's the part that separates me from everybody that's normal out there. Is there anything out there greater than me? What put the stars up there? Do I need to know and understand? Do I need to label it? Do I need to put... No. I don't care if you think God looks like the Easter Bunny. I don't care. And nor should any of you really. It's just simply not the deal. But the pathway to the power was understanding that there was something out there that was bigger. The mistake I think that we make is trying to sell somebody our idea of God. You see? And that's the reason where we make a lot of mistakes in our rooms, is that we want to share our religious conversion, and we share it just like that. And the brand new guy that's got God stuck sideways in his craw listens to that and goes, oh. Let me ask you a question, guys, just between me and you guys. Did you ever sit in a Sunday school class when you were growing up, church school or something like this, and look around the room and wonder why you were the only one that wasn't getting it? I mean, I'm looking around at this little room full of, little saints, and I'm just going, why can't I get it? I'm sitting in the room, and all I want to do is dismember something. I'm just like, sitting here flicking a cigarette lighter into the seat, trying to light the seat on fire. I want desperately to be good. I want desperately to understand it the way you understand it. I just can't. It's like two extension cords that just aren't quite long enough. And everybody else snapped into it real easy. And I'm still sitting over there struggling, just trying to... Damn it! If I could just get it a little bit closer. If I could just hold my mouth just right. If I could just... You understand what that's like? You see? And there is the dilemma that we face. There is the dilemma. And depending on how you were raised or what you came through, it could be a real stumbling block. You get brand new guys and you're looking at the steps and he's reading them off the wall, or he's looking at them in his book and he sees the God thing and he just goes, oh, fuck. You see? And what we're trying to get these little buckaroos to understand. These days I would rather have you coming in hating God. I'd rather have you coming in with no idea of God than to come in a little sunbeam for Jesus. Because in that perspective, there's nothing wrong with that, except that you come in with a bunch of preconceived ideas. You come in with a bunch of other people's ideas of what it is that you're dealing with. And what I'd rather you to do is experience, hear what it's like to get plugged in. As you begin to do the work, as you begin to do the things that we do, even though you don't really believe it's going to happen, one day you pull on the extension cord and you notice that they're coming a little closer together. And you go, damn, This is pretty cool. It actually, it's not such a struggle, you see? And you do a little more work, and you get a little service commitment, and you do the other things, and pretty soon you go, shit, I'm almost there. And pretty soon, you're there. And without even knowing it, for most of us, it was an absolute left field surprise. We just wake up one morning, and we sit on the edge of our bed, and we go, shit, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm happy. You see? The little extension cord locks together, and you just lay it down. And there's no more struggle. There's no more fighting. There's no more intensity in trying to be what you can't be. It was just all done for you because you were willing to do one thing. Submit to a program of action which required just that. Action. You were going to do something. In order to be a parent, you have to do something. You can't just be a parent by sitting in a PTA meeting. You see what I'm saying? You got to actually do something. You have to. We go from spiritual into the toilet just like that. I mean, nobody but a Texan could screw that up. You see? But that's what this thing is about. And so in this step 2 thing, we're not going to make a big deal out of it. And most of the step 2 work that I do with guys that I'm sponsoring like this, we're in it and out of it in 5 minutes. Tell me what you think about God. And he'll go, I love God. Okay, next. Or he'll say, I hate God. I say, okay, next. I just need to know where he is. You see what I'm saying? This is not a big, long, drawn-out ordeal. They didn't spend a lot of time in it. Look at the way it is in the big book. They didn't do that. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Always.
You wait just a minute. You can do that. Because I can always tell when Chris is getting pensive back there. He either needs to go to the bathroom or he's being pensive about wanting to say something. So
my butt's hurt.
So, which would bring us to step 3, and we're in really good shape time-wise on this thing. This is where the fun of this whole thing begins. You've got a brand new guy. Andy and I have only been talking for 20 minutes in the back room, okay? This is not a protracted deal. For 20 minutes we've been back there. In 20 minutes I know what Andy is. Andy knows what his truth is. I know where he is around the idea of God and a higher power. I understand that deal. And then we get into this deal. It's a funny thing in the book. You ever notice the way it sets itself up? It's on page 62 where it starts in our book. 61. It won't be in your book. But there's after the ABCs, you know where those are? They'll have those in your in the French book, I think it's in there. There's the ABCs on there. And then it says, being convinced, we were at step 3. And then they go 2 pages talking about something that is the most bizarre thing in the world. Selfishness and self-centeredness. If you guys were like me, I always wondered why Bill did this. Wait a minute. Booze and drugs, that's the root of my problem. Why is it we're talking about selfishness and self-centeredness? Fortunately, they didn't ask me to write the book. And in his wisdom, he understood what the lowdown was. There's a world of goofiness that stands between me and recovery, and one of the first ones that we need to address is selfishness and self-centeredness. I know you guys aren't selfish in any form or fashion. Nor was I for many, many years. But, buddy, when I saw it, when I realized it, as we slide from 3 into 4, we began to get our noses rubbed into just how selfish and self-centered that we are, and how full of fear that we are, and all the wreckage that we've caused based on self. And that's what we're going to talk about after lunch. You guys will be really tired, so we're going to do this thing after lunch naked. So that, yeah, everybody's got to take their clothes off to come in. And all of y'all do too, see? And so that way we can stay awake. We'll be too busy gawking at each other to get sleepy. So what there's talking, we're not, honest. Y'all have 10 of you coming up. Do we really have to do this? No, you don't. You don't want to see me naked after you eat anyway. It's just God dang. I'm going to read a couple of things on here and try to clear a little piece of this up before we get into there. And Chris can tie this up before lunch. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Now, this is the first place where Bill and Bob and those guys are trying to tell us that something may be amiss, that we may be doing something we shouldn't be doing. So let me ask you this quick question. How many of you guys think that all your drama, maybe you don't think that way now, but I bet you did at one time, thought that all of your drama came about from your booze and your drugs? My illusion is that if I stop drinking if I stop doing those nasty drugs, everything will get better. My life will get immediately better, because that's always been my problem, if I could just stop drinking. I never dreamed that there was anything else out there on the horizon that was tripping me up. And there is. There is. And then he gives you a couple of examples of what it's like. He says what usually happens. The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Men, we see this all the time in relationships. It's the easiest place to see your own selfishness. It's the easiest place. Guys, can't you be kind to a woman? That's the response is like this. Yes, you can be kind to a woman. Can you be mean? All the women are going, yeah, sure they can. But can we do what we got to do to get what we want, to get from point A to point B, you see? But we don't ever really understand why we're doing all that stuff. Selfishness and self-centeredness is playing a big role in this thing, but we're varied about this thing. Most of us don't come in here as jerks, but we can be variations of jerks. There's all kinds of stuff at play. There's a line here that says, is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? I'll wash the dishes. I'll mop. I'll do the laundry. I will. And then you can, help out. I mean, even when trying to be kind. But my motives are always at the bottom line, my motives are always one thing. Myers wants what he wants when he wants it. And to the extent that dominates your life, it's to the extent that the drama explodes in your life. The more I insist that you do things my way, the more conflict we're going to have. You ever talk to somebody like that in a meeting that they just will not converse without beating you up because you have to see it their way. You see? To the extent that. Any of you guys ever meet a girl in a bar and tell her you were a doctor? Y'all didn't do that? You guys are saints. We ought to go home, man. I'm telling you. I'd tell you whatever I think you wanted to hear. Yeah, I'm rich. Oil well? Yeah, I got one of them too. See? But I want what I want. Listen to the definition of selfishness. This is pretty funny like this. Concerned excessively or exclusively with oneself, seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage, purpose, or well-being, and here's the important part, without regards for others. See, it's not that I'm a mean guy. It's just that I don't even know you exist. I go through life running my game, totally unaware that you're even there. You see? And there's where we get into this. And we wonder why people just can't stand to be around us. The unfortunate part is that for so many of us, we get well off into our sobriety, well off into this work, and never see that truth because we didn't do adequate fourth and fifth steps. We didn't do appropriate work there. And what we ended up doing is just passing on through that thing and carrying the selfishness and self-centeredness to the other part of our existence. On 62, there's a line in here that says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Guys, it's such a conflict. It's such a contradiction to what I feel. Booze and drugs, that I think is the root of my problem. And I'll take it to my death. Because I don't want to look at the other part of this thing. I'm a giving and loving guy. Sensitive sometimes, yes, but I'm a giving guy. And I don't want anybody to squelch that story. Because that's the illusion, that's the delusion that I've lived with for years and years and years. I'm the kindest man I know. I don't think about the night I pushed you around. I don't think about the night I laid there in bed and heavy sighed until you finally said, oh, for crying out loud. I don't care that you worked 14 hours today and you're dead dog tired on your feet. I don't give a rat's butt. I don't care. All I want you to do is fix this. You see? Demonstrative, yes. You guys aren't like that, I know. But if you ask me if I'm like that, I'll tell you no. I'm not like that. I'm loving, and I'm the most thoughtful husband in the world. You see? And until I get my nose rubbed into it in inventory, and I look at why you retaliated, I've got this mean old beast of a woman that I'm married to, and she does all these things. Why does she do them? Doesn't she see the loving kindness in me? No. She sees the tyrant that insists that she does things she doesn't want to do right now. She sees that. And she retaliates. And then I retaliate. But all I see is my deal. I don't see her deal at all. Until somebody makes me see it in the inventory. And that's the reason why it's so important. And that's the reason why it's so important that we do it immediately. That we get on down the road and see this thing. You see? It says, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. This God that I don't even really believe in, that I don't really have a clue what He is, or she is, I don't know anything about that. All I know is that this literature keeps telling me that if I'll simply submit to the process, that I'll get what happens every time. And I've never seen it fail in all these years. Not ever have I seen it fail if you'll submit to that stuff. And then they talk about freedom at the bottom of the page. And then they give us this prayer, and then I'll let Chris finish this stuff up. The third step prayer that's on 63 in our literature, it's an interesting piece of literature. Nowhere in the prayer does it say anything about relieve me of the bondage of booze and alcohol, or booze and drugs, or booze. Relieve me of the bondage of sex. Relieve me of the bondage of gambling. Relieve me of the bondage of overeating. It doesn't say it. What does it say? In the middle of this prayer, relieve me of the bondage of self. There it is. This is the biggest single area where I think that we need to take what we think we know about AA and set it on the floor and re-examine it. Look at it again and see if we can't pick up what they're really saying here. What they're really saying here is that, and this is what my own experience has bore out. When I get up in the mornings, booze isn't waiting for me. I'm not fearful of the booze. What's waiting for me is self. And self, relieve me of the bondage of self. Because they understood that coming from a position of self, I'm always going to be in a collision course with you. Always going to be in collision course. My fears spring from self. My sex stuff, my need for things spring from self. We'll talk about this stuff a little bit after lunch during the inventory about the fears and stuff, but because it's a big, big piece of this deal. But at its core, always is self. And it's a funny thing. It's like somebody telling you a joke you didn't get, and then you hear it later and you still don't get it. But at some point in time, you connect the dot about self and what it's done to you. And you go, and I've seen this in hundreds of men over the years. They go, oh, shit. I see it. Yeah, I know you do. You see, I went from being a victim where everybody in the world got over on me to being a willing participant in the drama of my life and the cause of most of my problems, and then I have a choice to make. And I got to deal with it. And the inventory that we're getting ready to do is what helps us see that stuff. Good shit. Good shit. You want to finish this through lunch? You got about 22 minutes. Won't even need that. Chris Rammer, recovered alcoholic. I am the good twin. It's affirmation. Just keep saying it. I know. I am the good twin. I am the good twin. I am. Knowing about God and knowing God are two different things. Would y'all agree? And I know that there's a lot of people, what Myers was alluding to earlier, what he was talking about is a lot of us bring so much preconceived information into this fellowship about what this God thing is. And the truth is, Bill Wilson again in his infinite wisdom, and Frank Parkhurst and the first cats that helped write this book, they all understood that if we had to make my God the same as your God and you had to be that way, we were going to kill inadvertently a whole lot of people. So this is as open and roomy as it can possibly be. That's why it drives me crazy when we come in here and we want to spend way too much time talking about this. If I had to be setting this up, we wouldn't be talking this much about it. It's like it's real simple. Nowhere in the book does it say you've got to have a preconceived idea of this and have it all figured out. Everybody wants to do that in treatment. I don't understand God. Me neither. Okay, move on. Let's go. I'm 20 years sober. I mean, I still don't understand God. I mean, thank God. I don't know. I think I know a little bit more about that thing called the Spirit of the universe and the Creator. My ideas have crystallized, and I feel comfortable about certain areas today more than I did when I first got here 20 years ago. But all you got to do is have this idea that there's something out there bigger than you to make a beginning. And it's like when somebody comes into these rooms, guys, y'all realize that we have one thing to sell here? We're like a shoe salesman with one pair of shoes. This is what we're selling. Do you have any handbags? Nope, don't. How about belts? Nope. We laugh, but that's what we do. We come in here like this. You can have anything you want. Pick what you want and leave the rest. I'm sorry. One stinking pair of shoes, that's all we got. You want them? It's a yes or no. Well, yes. I think I'll try those. No? Then go away. This idea that we have something else to sell besides this thing called the spiritual experience is ludicrous. You can have anything you want, any way you want it. But this is where people get up and leave. They talk too much about God. They talk too much about God. All we have to sell here is God. I can't rid myself of the selfish and self-centeredness that Myers is talking about. I got to have the spiritual experience, which allows me to wake up in the morning and not think about me and think about you. It's a pretty cool deal. I didn't get on the plane to come over here to hear myself talk. I got on the plane to come over here and visit with you and get to know y'all. Out of my head, I can be of use to you guys. Y'all follow? Not once in 20 years have I wanted to pick up a drink. That's the miracle of it. For 19 years, I drank and could not drink for periods of time. But when I wasn't drinking, there's a great line in the book. Bill Wilson says, it's over in the more about alcoholism, I think it says, it's the great obsession of every abnormal drinker to be able to control and enjoy his drinking. This is a great line, because I can control it. You piss me off, I'll stop. If that's what you want, I'll quit right now. Make you happy, I'll quit, and I'm going to make you miserable. My first wife used to bring a bottle of vodka home and said, set it down and said, here, drink this. Honey, I'm sober 3 weeks now. You don't want to ruin my relapse. You don't want me to relapse, do you? She says, you're not sober. You're dry maybe, but you're not sober. I liked you better drunk. So you're nodding your head. Yeah. Okay, honey, if you insist. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is not what I want. I'm off to the stupid right. We only have one thing. Guy comes into the deal and says, I'll do this program, but I don't do this God thing. Then I can't help you. I'm not saying you have to leave. I'm not saying you're not welcome. I can't help you because I'm not here as a part of a self-help program. The steps don't get me sober. Are y'all keen on that? The steps don't fix me. The steps allow me to have a thing called a spiritual experience, and God fixes me. This is what everybody wants to split hairs with. The steps got me sober. No, they didn't. The steps cleared out all the gunk so that you could have this thing called a spiritual experience, and this power that created that beautiful sea out there got me sober. And if somebody in their arrogance wants to come in here and argue with me whether there's a God or not, I'm not going to waste 10 seconds. That's what I'm saying. Over half of us believed that there was a God when we got here. Why even read this? The worst meetings I go to are the meetings where we read these chapters because it just seems so redundant. Why are we talking about something that I don't have a problem in the world with? I always knew. When I was eating out of dumpsters in Houston, Texas, I knew there was something out there bigger than me. Never had a problem. Y'all follow? Didn't have any access, didn't have any knowledge, that's the deal. This is not about belief in God, this is about access to this power. And that's what the 12 steps do. Y'all cool with that? Real quick, and I'm going to move. This whole thing revolves around a thing called a little window of opportunity. Bill Wilson wrote extensively about it. Of course, when the treatment centers got involved in it, they called it the pink cloud. Y'all ever come into a meeting and all of a sudden you start to do a little work and you start feeling better and everything just seems okay. And it's like, I don't know what happens. Last week I was ready to commit suicide, and this week, buddy, I see some hope. I see some things happening. And some old geezer over in the corner will kick somebody in the side and, said, well, watch him. He's on that pink cloud, and when he falls off, he's going to bust his ass. And it's just ha, ha, ha. They make fun of us when we catch fire with this thing. And I got to tell you something, folks. There's people out there right now for 20 years waiting for me to fall off that pink cloud. That feeling of neutrality around the alcohol and that hopefulness is what we call God's grace. That's what Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob wrote extensively about. This is a real thing. This is cause and effect. There's no stepchildren here. Some of us are going to get it, some of us are not. It's cause and effect. You do the work, even in a bumbling way. You get off your butt and begin to pursue this rather quickly. Some of you at the 3rd step prayer, some of you at 4th step. Mine was between the 4th and 5th step when I had my spiritual experience. And it only intensified as I finished doing the work. First time I started sponsoring somebody, I cried for a week because I realized how the whole thing worked. I help you over here. Guess who's helping me over here? And that's what we talk about later this afternoon. God's helping me over there. I mean, this is real. But we're going to walk around and tiptoe, and we're not going to talk about God because we don't want to embarrass anybody and we don't want to offend anybody. Listen, I was talking over in Louisiana not long ago about it, and from the time I got there, they warned me about the guy. And the guy was sitting back over here, and he was the atheist of the group. And he didn't talk about God. In any meeting he was in, and they started talking about God, he got up and left. And I fixed it real quick. We started off talking about God. You follow? And he got up and left. And you think I give a rat's butt? Now, how many people, that's what Myers has said, how many people have we killed tiptoeing around this thing about God? I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I just want to paint a clear picture that this is open and roomy. Guys, when I got to this fellowship, my idea of God was a tornado. I was out there in Texas. We chasing tornadoes. And if you ever seen a big old thunderhead coming up over West Texas, and I guarantee you, and that lightning coming down, buddy, that's power. Now, that's the face I put on God. You can't put that. God's... No. That works fine for me. It's like Myers said. You want God to be Mr. Magoo? Go right ahead. It doesn't seem to really matter. We've got a lot of people, guys. We've got Buddhists dying by the thousands out there because they won't come into our fellowship because they think you've got to be a Christian to be here. And you do not. You may get taken to your Christian roots. You may be taken to a different faith altogether. How cool is this spiritual journey? And all you got to do is have an open mind. You think you know what it's supposed to be? You're not going to learn anything. You follow? If you come over here to France with a preconceived idea about what Frenchmen are like and what the countrysides are like, No, you come over with an open mind. It's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful place this is. It's the same thing we have to do with our fellowship, guys. There's a window of opportunity. I talk about it lots. There's a window of opportunity that takes place. As a result of coming in and learning your truth, and you begin to do the work, this little window opens up. This is a place that I believe Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob clearly understood was the time to work the steps. He uses the word urgently and precisely and willing to go to any lengths. On page 28 in our book it says, are you willing to, it says, we each in our own turn sought the same escape with the same desperation of drowning men. Y'all understand that? That doesn't mean like we're going to sit down and take our time to do this work. Now, we got guys in meetings killing people, telling people to do that. You can take your time to do this work. Why are we telling people that? Because the book tells us exactly opposite that. The book says, seek the solution with the desperation of a drowning man. You'll follow? But they're right and we're wrong. And we're asked, like the little brother was talking about, not to bring our books in. We don't want to talk about God because we don't want to scare the newcomer off. Listen, if the discussion of God is going to scare the newcomer off, then he's not ready anyway. Somebody comes up and says, well, I'm not sure I believe this God stuff. Then it's perfectly okay. Go drink. Have a nice one on me. Oh, you would send somebody back out to drink? Yes. Because if I force them to do this God thing, they're going to quit before they're halfway through and then blame me for why they couldn't get sober. The book talks about attraction, guys. If you're not done, that's the problem that we have in AA. You know the expression, we're picking the little apples too green. Y'all with us? And that's what happens to us in AA. Too many times we spend way too much time working with somebody that's not nearly ready to get sober. Instead of spending it with the people that are desperate to get well, we're out there trying to cajole somebody, trying to egg them on, trying to color it. Don't worry about this God thing right now. Shame on us. Shame on us. Because the one thing that we have to carry to them is this thing called God. we got these cats coming into treatment, and they see the steps on the wall when they get there. It's a high-dollar treatment center, and they look up the wall and they go, oh, shit, more of this 12-step crap. Yeah, except the difference at this hospital is you're going to get to know what this is really about. Not the candy-colored version, but the real McCoy. Lack of power, the book says, where Myers was just reading, lack of power is the dilemma. Y'all follow? Not just around the drinking and drugging, but in the relationships, in my finances, in my health. That's what we're trying to get you guys connected to, is power, real power. I don't need any of that. I just need to stop drinking. Go away. You're not ready. Don't know what to tell you. You don't have to leave, but I don't have time to mess with you. I'm going to go find me somebody that's ready to do this work. Y'all cool with that? And then they work the steps and they have this spiritual experience and it knocks them on their butt. This nonsense that has crept into AA. I'm going to work one step a month until I'm... So you're telling me that you're going to wait a year to have your spiritual experience. Let me ask you a question. What happens if the window of opportunity closes at 2 months? No, and everybody would have a different answer perhaps, but the bottom line, brother, that's it. What happens? I'm 20 years sober. What happens to me if the obsession to drink comes back? I'm going to call my sponsor. No, you're not. If the obsession comes back, you're going to go drink. This is not a self-help program. I'm going to remember the damage I did. I'm going to remember eating out of dumpsters 20 years ago, and I'm going to stop my... No, you're not. You're going to drink. Y'all follow? The window of opportunity is real, folks. And when it closes, it's a bear. That's not the time to go look for a sponsor when your butt's falling off. That's not the time to try to finish doing a 4th step when you want to drink so bad. The time to do that work is when that window is open and you feel comfortable in your skin. Let's don't waste the newcomer's time by just talking willy-nilly. This is the time to get busy. You get what I'm saying is that there's a sense of urgency to finish this work. You follow? How many of us have watched people leave and never come back? The time is now. We've painted this picture in the United States. I don't know about here. In the United States that you can come back anytime you want. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. That's okay. If you relapse, you can always come back because all we have is today. What a crying shame. We got people out there with 20 years of sobriety relapsing. 20 years down the toilet, coming back in as a newcomer. Most of those people don't ever stay sober again. Y'all understand that? Because of the progression of the illness, they never can come back as a newcomer. But because they thought they had just today, they relapsed. Rubbish. Y'all understand? Some of you are looking confused. I live life one day at a time, folks. I'm telling you. The disease... Where's my beer? I set this down 20 years ago. Did my disease stop progressing? Absolutely not. That's why so many of us, after years of sobriety, start to smoke pot again or start to drink again. The allergy, and then all of a sudden we're gone beyond recall. Any of y'all watch somebody come back after a period of sobriety? Oh my gosh, and they're worse shape than ever. How did you get so messed up so quick? Because the disease didn't stop progressing. You thought it went into remission. The effects of it did, but the disease continued to progress. That's why cats with long-term sobriety, I'm hanging on for dear life. Please don't play light of this. Don't think that you can walk away from the fellowship and stop going to meetings and stop sponsoring people. Because if you get sick again, you may never make it back. The spiritual experience is real, folks, but you got to do things daily to stay connected. That's what this is about. That's what the rest of what we're talking about this afternoon, that's what that's about. Y'all down with that? This will be fast and furious this afternoon. We'll finish up earlier. There's no way we're going to go to 6 because it's just not that complicated. Cool? We'll see y'all later. Let's go have lunch.
Be back at 2 o'clock, guys. 2 o'clock in the room.